Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is um, March 23rd of 2021. It's 1:34 a.m. here in Fort Worth, Texas. I went to bed a couple hours ago. I was hoping I would sleep longer, and then when I woke up, maybe the stimulus money would be in my bank account because it's not there yet. I know it's coming. I've been waiting like a week, I think you might say, a little bit over a week maybe. So, gonna kill some time here. Kill some time with me. Uh, so, I haven't done much with my. We got to get this right now. Google Pixel 4a, because one of the videos the first video I made about it, I talked through the entire video, and if I had $1 for every time I said Pixel 3a, I would be a wealthy man. So I've taken a few pictures with nothing spectacular. I'm happy with the camera, of course, ability of it. But I mean, so far I haven't taken anything worthy of showing, but I'm going to show it to you anyway, I guess. This is a video of the room that I took the other day, and so you're going to see the room that I'm in here. Full screen. Okay, this is March 21st, Sunday, and this is an indoor video using my Google Pixel 4a. He got it finally. Let me show you the Coke. I moved the Coke over. I need to add some water to that fish tank. There's the Coke supply. And some firewood underneath it in case we need it. Another 24 pack of Coke over here. And that is the back of a solar cell. And I was wondering if we could get it mounted inside the window. I know that's not the ideal way to do it, but I don't think we can I don't want to do something that's going to hurt the binding for the, whatever you call the thing around the window there. This is my refrigerator, which has, I think, only Coke in it. Let's see here. Small refrigerator, an office type refrigerator. I've got a whiteboard up there, but I'm going to kind of avoid it because I might have some personal information on it. Laundry basket. I've got some stuff on the floor that I want to get up off of the floor, but right now it's on the floor. Okay, this is the backside of my computer here. When I was trying to put the arm on thing, I think we might have messed up the display port because that cable was still plugged in. My son was leaning, holding the thing, and I think we might have messed up the display port. but we have HDMI port, and actually I've never used there's a micro C or whatever. There's the Brio camera, by the way. I kind of worry about having these things at the end of my bed, right where my head, will be. Have something come down crashing on top of my head. That door goes into the bathroom. This Medtronic thing is for my pacemaker. It's going all the time, so I guess and they want you to keep it, within 6 feet of your bed or something, so. I'm using front-facing camera on this cell phone, of course, and I think it's doing really well. Anyway, that's it for now. Okay, this is March 21st, Sunday. Okay, I think we're back. Let me check. We're back. I've got let's see. We got my date and time here underneath there. I'm not sure if I want to keep it or not. But let's go, wait a minute, let's go to Google Photos, back to Google Photos here. See if there is, here's my daughter. She wasn't actually trying to fit this in window, she was just trying to get it on the rack that's got wheels on it down. But anyway, this is the power supply that goes with the solar cell. Right now I've got it plugged in to electricity. So it's, it's charging. In fact, this red light shows that it's charging the battery. But the way I've got it, the buttons pushed or whatever, this is also working as a UPS thing. So it's filtering the electricity that's coming in, because this is plugged into the wall, and then this cable that runs over is plugged into this, and it should be a UPS, take any surges or things like that. And if I were to lose power, I would have power for a little bit, but Hillary got this for us, so it's really in case we have another power outage or something. And it's on wheels. Yeah, you can see here it's got wheels on it, and then this handle comes up, so I could wheel it into the dining room, and if we were to lose power for any length of time, I could power the ex-wife's breathing machine, and we could power a few lights for a little bit, stuff like that. It's not going to have enough power to, power all the lights in the place, or definitely not air conditioning, or in case of, you know, a winter storm or something, it's not going to supply enough electricity for a space heater or something like that that draws a lot of electricity. Anyway, I hope we don't need this again, or we didn't have it when we had the uh, Texas power grid fail us for 2.5 or 3.5 days. And I forget, I think about 80 people died in Texas. I believe it was 80 they've decided on because of that outage of power. And so, let's see, what else do we have in the picture department here? These images, by the way, were taken with the Pixel 4a. Not good. I mean, it's a good picture, but the subject was not good. I mean, you know. So I need some more practice taking some pictures. I mean, there's no good picture of me, let's face that. You know, I'm an old man. I'm not even sure if this, I think it does. I think this, I think it has that thing where you can push what beautification, or that will take out some, you know, I believe. Let me see if I can pull up what we have here. Okay, there's sight. I'm not sure. Oh, that's night sight. Oh, I see. That just shows the first part of the word. Okay. Then there's portrait. I'm guessing the portrait would hopefully maybe work on some. I'm not sure. And then there's camera. And then there's video. Then there's mode. Okay. There's panorama, photosphere, and there's lens. And I think the lens is when you take a picture of an object and it attempts to identify it for you. I'm afraid to use it on, you know, try to like use it on myself. Might come back with identify me as a hippopotamus or something, you know, I don't know. Let's see, switching cameras, yeah. And it says, try raising the camera for yourself. Okay, there. So it's smart. Try raising the camera for yourself. Gotta get that. Whoops, I keep hitting the wrong. When it has a, what is that, green button or something on and off, how can I keep hitting the volume? Okay. Well, I know what I can show you. Minimize this and go over to downloads. I put them in downloads. I started scanning some pictures. I have a whole bunch of pictures that were taken a long time ago. Old-timey pictures. This is from 1972. My wife and I at this point had a patrol service. We started a company that was a patrol service, and I was the only one patrol. Well, when I first started, I did have somebody else patrol like 2 days a week, but it didn't work out because, well, the first guy that I hired, I was patrolling, well, in the beginning I was patrolling 5 days a week. Or no, 7 days a week. And then finally and when I say days, I mean, you know, I mean nights, midnight shift and whatever. Then I hired this guy, a young guy, and every night that he went out, he managed to make contact with the police department, and he'd come back and, you know, with his activity sheet filled out, and he'd spent all night helping the police, who always ask him to help them. And I mean, there was times when I patrolled and I'd come up, be the first. This is before cell phones too, you know. I would come upon a traffic accident or something like that, and I would use actually CB radio and call the wife at home on the CB radio and tell her to call the police, you know, call the police department. And I would, sometimes, it depended on the situation, if the car was off the side, you know, but sometimes I would stand by, and as soon as the police showed up, I'd say, you know, if it was obvious, I'd just, you know, wave and leave. If it looked like, hey, I said, you know, I would say, hey, do you need any help? And they'd, no, that's fine. And then I'd leave. He stayed, you know. And I kept telling him, you know, hey, these people are paying us to patrol and check their place. You know, don't be helping the police department. They got 1,500 police officers, you know, and you and I are it here, so, you know. And so finally I let him go. Well, the reason I let him go was, really, well, I was, you know, I was, I knew you know, that he was not helping me. But anyway, he called in. He was out. It was one of his 2 nights to be out. And he called in, and he said, this is like 4 a.m. in the morning, and there's somebody up on the roof of this, and it was a little strip mall, very few places in there, maybe 5 or 6 buildings. I think a laundromat, and I don't know, a place that sold beauty supply. I mean, it was not, we're not talking here Beverly Hills or something, you know. And we didn't have any account there either, by the way. It was kind of a stranger, you know. There was the road that came down was kind of like a hill, and then you could look over there and you could see the. So he called. So I called the police, and you know they're dispatched to go there. Then I get a call from the police department, and the police department says, you know, are you the supervisor or the owner of, you know, Merchant Security Service? I said, yes. The police officer would like you to come to the scene. Could you do that? I said, sure. So jumped in my clothes, drove over there. Sergeant was there, and he says, this guy works for you and everything. I said, yeah, you know. And I could tell, I knew, you know, son was gonna. And he says, okay, well, let me show you. So we walked up this, it was a street, we walked up the hill, you know. He says, your employee there, we asked him where he was when he saw the man on top of the roof. And he said he was right, you know, here. And I said, you know, you can't see the roofs, you can't see the roof, you know. He says, yep. I said, okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, and I'll take care of this. And so that after the guy finished his shift and everything, I said, hey, you know, which was really basically the truth, you know, I really can't afford to, you know, I thought I could afford to have somebody helping me out so I didn't have to work 7 nights a week, but I really can't, so I'm sorry, you know. And I let him go. But so this was when I was had that company for about a year. Oh, we have I set it up that we had a very small area that we patrol that I patrolled, and I had I didn't try to take any guard accounts. Just was doing the patrol thing. But one area I patrolled was a ballpark for kids. And there was like, I don't know, 9, 10, 12 playing fields in there that were occupied. I don't know exactly what their schedule was, but you know, so there'd be little tiny kids playing baseball, you know, with coaches and older kids, and I guess, you know. And I just patrolled that area. And the fathers, you know, paid for me to check it, you know. And then I got a call from the mothers group, and they said, we'd like to have you know, you patrol it, you know. We'd like to have an officer out here when we're open, you know. And of course, there again, I'm the only, you know. And we discussed money. And I said, right now, all my officers are, you know, busy, and I don't have somebody. I said, can I call you back in a few hours and see if I can line somebody up? So I called a friend of mine that I went to high school with, who was working for Burns or Pinkerton, I think Pinkerton or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, I called him up and I said, yeah, would you be willing? I said, you know, there's little kids out there, and there are a whole bunch of them. Kids can be a pain in the ass. I said, but I do not want to have to be out there. I have to try to sign up new business, and I have to patrol, you know, 7 nights a week. I'll only take this thing, and too, whatever like Pinkerton and those kind of places, guard places, they were paying the minimum wage. I think actually, well, like I think it was Pinkerton, one of them was paying the minimum wage, but you had to. It was something that later on I read about, that nationwide they had to pay out a lot of money because they were doing something, making the employee buy the uniform, or I wouldn't buy the uniform because I actually worked for Pinkerton, Burns, Wells Fargo, and some others as secondary jobs, and but whatever it was, they paid the minimum wage, and so somebody complained to, I'm not sure which group now. I would have known in the past, but complained to the government, you know, wage and hour people or something like that, and they ruled that, I think it was Pinkerton, that they should have been paying at least 10 cents more an hour. And therefore, every one of these people who worked, and the turnover rate was like 200%. So, you know, if you have this Burns, Pinkerton, Wells Fargo, whatever, twice a year, basically all your employees would be, you know, quit. They'd hire in, they'd be quit. But anyway, they ruled that they had to pay, so they had to go figure up everybody who had worked for them for X amount of number of years or whatever, times 10 cents an hour. And they had to pay that. That was a lot of money. But anyway, I paid this friend of mine, or I asked him, I said, now, are you going to be able to do it? Because I knew him. And I said, I do not want to say that I'm taking the account and, you know, then end up having to do it myself. Oh, no, I'll do it. And I said, no, there's some little kids out there. If they're going to intimidate, no. So I called back and made the deal, and it was Larry Winship. He's passed away now. I went to high school with Larry and Jerry Winship, identical twins. He went out there for one night, and then he called me and said, I don't want to do it. You know, I don't know if he said, he didn't say I'm scared of little kids, but so I had to go out there and do it. And so I think I worked, a couple weeks doing that in addition to everything else. I forget what days they did it, but so I was out there walking, drove our patrol car out there, but parked it, and was out there walking, and I mean, there was a lot of people there, kids, coaches, they had a concession stand, that type of stuff. I was out there, checking everything, doing my thing. And a mother comes running over. Oh, that boy over there, my son was sitting up on the trash container, and that boy over there, he pushed my son off of the trash container. And I said, ma'am, I'm not out here to control, these little kids. I said, there's tons of staff, coaches, and all kinds of people. There's all kinds of parents out here. There's all kinds of, adults out here. And I said, I'm out here to make sure nobody breaks into a car, kidnaps somebody, robs a concession stand. I'm not out here to be a babysitter. And she says, that might have been the lady I talked to. She says, I'm with a women's group, and we're the ones, we're paying you out, you're paying you to be out here or whatever. I said, no, I'm out here for such and such, And I said, if you have a complaint, you can call the office. And she said, well, I will. So anyway, I went home, and at the end of the thing, I went home. Go home, and then I was going to have to get ready and go on patrol. And the phone rings, and I answered it, Merchant Security Service. Yes, I'm Mrs. So-and-so, and I'm and we just hired, you to have somebody out here, and there was somebody pushed my son up, a boy pushed my son off the trash container, and I went over to your security officer, and I said, oh, that'd be Officer Jim Howard. I said, he's a good officer. No, he told me that, blah, 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 and I said, no, he's correct, 100% correct. I said, we're not out there to be babysitters. And she says, well, then we're going to cancel the service. And I said, that's fine. And I said, now, do you know who to call for, to get, and she said, well, no, I don't know. And I said, well, now you have choices. You can have, Burns, Pinkerton, Wells Fargo, or you can actually hire a Kansas City, Missouri police officer off duty. And I said, here's the phone number for them. I was ready for it. I had got the phone number, because I knew what was going to happen. I said, you can call the police department, and they'll give you, an off-duty officer to be out there. And she says, okay, click. So a day or two later, I still have the patrol account. I go out there and pull in, and there are 2 police officers. By the way, there may have been a black kid or a black coach or a black family out there. Remember I told you this was a large, I forget what it was called, for baseball, And I don't think I ever saw a black family out there. There had to be, but that number of people, there had to be somebody that was black. But I wasn't looking for a black person, But I didn't see any. But there were 2 black people there, police officers, Kansas City, Missouri police officers, black. They were walking together like a tandem of horses. They had their long nightsticks on. So I knew what happened. The police department said, okay, it's... and I forget what... I used to know. In fact, I knew eventually... I happened to, in fact, the guy became a police officer because of me. I was a reserve police officer, and I stopped him for speeding when he was like 16 years old or something like that, and just gave him a warning or whatever. And he went on to become a police officer, and I'm not going to go over that again, except that I was working at a hospital then, and the guy that was like the lieutenant at the hospital, uh, he fucking hated me, and I fucking hated him. One of the few people I actually hated. Um, and um, so I was making my we switched every 2 hours at that hospital. I was making my rounds inside the hospital. As I come up in the lobby, and the police officer that I told you about, who became the guy who became a police officer because of me, because I handled it, because he, anyway. So he's checking out. He had become a Kansas City, Missouri police officer, and he was on the patrol service for a while. And then he went to motorcycle, and then he had an accident. So he was in the hospital and been there for a week, or I don't know how long. There was a ton of police officers coming to see him, and anyway, I never went up to his room to bother him. I knew how it was. You get with having all those officers dropping in, and then having there was 25 security officers that worked there, and I bet probably I didn't go up, but probably 24 of us went up to say hello to him. But anyway, he was at the checking out. He was in the front lobby, and there was this lieutenant who didn't like me, and I didn't like him. I had good reason not to like him. And so anyway, Charlie sees me, the supervisor. Jim, and I said, I got, so Charlie has to come over to me, And truthfully, if you're the inside officer and you're switching, there's things you need to check. It's a gigantic hospital. And you can't hardly check it in 2 hours, but he came over and he says, oh, have you seen, did you go up and see, my God, I can't remember his name now. I said, no. He says, well, come over and I'll introduce you. And I said, no, that's not Charlie. I said, let me just make my rounds. I really need to, stuff needs to be checked. No, come on. I said, Charlie, no, come on over. So I go over. And Charlie says to the officer, oh, this is Jim Howard. He works for me. I'd been a security supervisor. I'd worked at 2 hospitals prior to coming to work at this hospital. And the second hospital that I worked at, I was a supervisor there for years. I never ever said, somebody works for me. And actually I gave up being the supervisor on the second shift after years, because I just wanted to work there. I didn't want to go there on the second shift as a supervisor anyway. But anyway, I just wanted to be on the day shift. That's what I wanted to be from, But when I finally convinced the director of security, let me go to the day shift. He says, you really want to go to, you wouldn't be a supervisor. I said, I never wanted to be a supervisor to begin with. You know that. You had to beg me and have other people come and beg me to, I never wanted to be. I just came over on the second shift because you said you had a couple of problems you needed fixed. I came over and fixed them, and I spent years over here. I just want to work the day shift. And he said, I've never had anybody turn down, resign as a supervisor, and blah, 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 blah. And, anyway. Oh, okay, that was what I was getting. I was heading to, so then when the switch was to be made in, I don't know, a week or something like that, then I would go back to the day shift. And so then especially the 2 guys, but, the 2 other guys that I worked with, as we're down in the emergency room or something comes up or whatever, then they'd say the nurses, oh, we're going to have a new supervisor. And the nurses were, ER nurses were like, you have a, I didn't know you had a super, I didn't know you had a supervisor. Yeah, Jim's been a supervisor for, 2.5 years or whatever. They said, well, we didn't know it. I never, So anyway, the Charlie, this is, so he says, he he works for me. And he says, Jim, this is so-and-so. And then the patient being dismissed there says, well, I know Jim. He says, the reason I became a police officer is because of Jim. I was 16 years old, and he stopped me, for speeding. And he was so professional and so nice. He says, I decided I wanted to be a police officer, and that's why I became a police officer. And God, why can't I remember his name? But he became a police officer eventually with the department where I was reserve officer, and then he got hired in by another police department, not the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, but he got hired in, and since he was new, they put him on narcotics stuff. So he was out, making deals and whatever, not making a bunch of, he was just gathering information, and he made the local TV news finally, and the front page of the Kansas City Times or Kansas City Star newspaper with the people that he arrested when this whole thing went down. And the Lee Summit Police Department was so fucking happy, they made the front page with this big drug bust and all that kind of stuff. And then the chief calls him in and everything. Oh, you did great, Bob. You did great and everything. And said you're going to be a supervisor and you're going to be blah blah blah. And his name just wants to pop. He fixed my brakes on my car one time. Had me take my car over to his house, and we went out there and talked while he fixed my brakes. Anyway, the Lee Summit chief of police calls him in, and he says, this officer says, well, I got an offer from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. They want to hire me. And the chief went, you're quitting us? Yes, I am, to go to work for Kansas City, Missouri PD. And the chief says, we'll never hire you, and, blah, blah, blah. And so he went to Kansas City, first as a patrol officer, then as a motorcycle officer, and then he had his accident, and then he actually, for the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, he became, and I think that's the only duty he did, he became the guy who all the Kansas City, Missouri police officers would contact if they wanted to work off duty, and if anybody wanted to hire a Kansas City, Missouri police officer to work in a bank or whatever it was, he was the guy you called. So I imagine that was the only thing that he, that he did, but that gets back to my story of, so anyway, in the lobby there, he says, no, I know Jim Howard. I became a police officer because of him. I think I told that story here before, but I remember that's the only time I told it to years later when I was in Miami, and a security officer was down in Miami from that hospital and on vacation with his brother. and we met and spent hours together down at the Bayside Mall there by the ocean. And that was one of the things, because we were talking about the old days and stuff. And that's a story, and I told him, and he says, well, was Charlie humiliated and whatever? And I said, I should have been, but I don't think it had any effect on him. I just think, I don't even think he knew that he'd been, So, that was a long, rambling story. Here's a picture of the kids when they all, that's 3 of them, when they all lived with me. I got divorced after 12 years of marriage, and we had 4 kids. And the wife, of course, was, during the time we were married, she was an excellent mother and everything. And so, I paid child support. She got the kids. Immediately, she decided she didn't want the kids. She called and, she called and said, I said, bring the kids over. So I was living with my mother because I couldn't afford to pay child support and have a place to live myself. But anyway, she brought them over, and the kids, all 4 of them, lived with me for 2 years. Now, I'm not sure if it was 2 actual years or if it was 2 school terms. Can't remember now. But I know it was 2 school terms because back then the school would send things home. Mrs. Howard, you need to send cookies tomorrow for, for the classroom, or do this or that. Always, it was never Mr. or Mrs. Howard. Or, of course, if I'd have shown up for a PTA meeting or something, or to see the teachers, then of course then they would have known. Anyway. So anyway, this is me, of course, and 2 of my kids. And these are systops, system operators of bulletin board systems or whatever. They had meetings, get-togethers, stuff like that. I've told that story, but it's a great story. Well, my daughter, LaDonna, was writing, anyway, we all had bulletin board systems. This is before Amazon and Google and all that. Was just before. This was before that. People had to call in on a telephone line with a modem, get into your bulletin board system or whatever. And my daughter LaDonna wrote a thing I think it was every week, the systop next door, and it was fantastic. And anyway, that was on my bulletin board system. And then other systops that had bulletin board systems, they contacted me. Jim, was it okay if we copy and put? I said, sure. So they ran it on theirs too. And then she didn't use her real name. Let me pull this back up. When I was like in the 3rd or 4th grade or whatever, there was a girl that I liked, and she was a little cute. She was a cute little girl, and I was a cute little boy or whatever. And her name was Joanne Goodman. So anyway, LaDonna, said, well, I don't want to use my name. And I said, why don't you use Joanne Goodman's name? Use that maybe a name. She said, oh, that's good, So everybody wanted to know who Joanne Goodman was. I told them that, which they should have kind of known, I think. I said, well, they said, well, I said, no, it's sent to me or something. I forget what I told them. Like I didn't have it, it was sent to me, the story. And anyway, my daughter is really, I can say she's really smart. And because she didn't get it from me. So everybody wanted to know who she was, and the stuff she wrote was fantastic, really good. And so there was a Commodore users group that met at Baptist Hospital, and there was a large meeting room with monitors up, and hospital with all kinds of facilities, and it was usually pretty crowded. But some people got together and they said, contacted me, Jim, we're going to find out who Joanne Goodman is. At the Commodore users group, we put the word out that we're going to find out who she is and everything. Are you coming? And I usually at that point was going, but I didn't, but I said, yeah, I'll be there. So I told LaDonna, you want to go with me? And she said, yeah. So we went, and so people came over. LaDonna and I and a couple other systops were sitting at a table, waiting to go in for the thing. And we're going to find out. Have you heard the plan? Here's what we're going to do. When the thing starts, we're going to page over the public address system, for Joanne Goodman to, that there's a call for her. And then she'll walk over and take the phone on the wall there. And then we'll know who she is. And of course, LaDonna is sitting right there. And that's what they did. But of course, nobody picked up the phone. And unless somebody's been watching my videos, this is the first they know that Joanne Goodman was my daughter, LaDonna. I think I showed this picture the other day. My grandfather, my father, and me. James Joseph Howard Sr., James Joseph Howard Jr., James Joseph Howard III. And I think I showed this the other day. This is my father's family. This is my father right here. My father's mother and his father and his brothers and sisters. Me at St. Joe Hospital, the first hospital that I worked security at. We had 10 security officers that worked there. We had 2 shot during the time that I worked there. First one was permanently disabled, and the second was killed, John Gallegos. But John Gallegos managed to shoot the guy that shot him. I've told that story, though. Let's see. Me back in my shortwave radio listening days, that was my hobby. My grandmother and me. This is my mother's mother. During the time that, during the time of the first and second grade, she came to live with us, and she had a total heart block, which is what I have, by the way. But back then, that was a death penalty. It was, that was it. But so when she developed it, when my mother was, a little girl, I don't know exactly what age, little girl, and she wasn't, expected to live a year, even a year or two, and she managed to raise her daughter without any help from, her ex-husband. he refused to pay any child support at all. He finally got taken to court, and the judge ordered him that he had to pay child support, and he told the judge, I'm not paying child support, and he didn't pay child support. Nothing happened to him. Maybe that's because he was a member of the KKK. He was a Klan member. That's my mother's father. When she got married, her father refused to come to the marriage because it was performed in a Catholic church. But anyway, so she had this total heart block, really nothing they could do. She took phenobarbital, which I guess is addictive, and I guess it must give you kind of a high or something. So this is when I was in the first or second grade. So my job, I was put in charge of her medication, and I decided when she got it. Of course, she could ring her little bell, but she didn't. She never rang the bell when she knew, that. And plus two, she knew, where she had taken overdoses in the past of it. She was there and she was taking care of me. And I called for some reason. I've mentioned this before. Nobody's ever answered me. My entire life, I called my father Jim, and my mother Betty, and my mother, of course, called her mother here Mom. So when she came, I ended up calling, her mom, and I think it bothered my mother a little bit that I wasn't, that I called. But my parents never ever said, don't call me Jim or don't call me Betty or whatever. That I just picked up, and so anyway, that's me. Cute, right? This is our country people, country people. Back in the olden days, before you young whippersnappers were around, everybody, tons of people worked farms. Now I think an awful lot of it is, fewer and fewer actual farmers, and it's big business now. This is Aunt Etta here. This is the sister of my mother's father, and she definitely was not a Klan member. And this is my mother. This is Aunt Skeet, and I'm not sure, with my mother's family, there was a lot of people called Aunt or something, and I don't know. I'm not sure where she, this is my dad. This is Skeet's son. This is me. And I think that's our dog. Did we take our dog when we went to, and this is in Holden, Missouri. And Aunt Etta was married to a real nice guy. He had a bunch of coon dogs. Must be like you pull up there, because we went there 2 or 3 times over the years, and you pull up and about 20 or 25 dogs would come running over, barking and yapping at you. Skeet here, this is their son, and she was obsessed with him, and he controlled her life. And he died. He was in high school, I think a senior in high school, and there was I think I mentioned this the other day in a video. Bunch of teenagers out in Sedalia, Missouri, and car went off into like a little ditch. No injuries, apparently, and all the kids got out of the car, but apparently Michael didn't, and there was a little bit of small amount of water running through this ditch, and I guess the car must have been turned on its side or something. Apparently the car filled with the water and must have covered his mouth and his nose, and he suffocated or drowned. And Skeet, for years, raved and ranted that he had been murdered and all kinds of stuff. Then she finally moved to Kansas City, Missouri, and she didn't have any skill other than being a waitress or whatever. And I can remember her talking to my mother on the phone, and that Skeet wasn't feeling well. And I think she finally went to a doctor. I thought that she died of the flu, at a fairly young age. She had one time when we went down there to the country. I don't know if you ever heard a thing. We'll be there if the creek don't rise. When we go from Kansas City to, which wasn't very far, a few hours, a couple of hours drive, when we would go down to see one of our country relatives, because we lived in the city, sometimes the creek had risen and we'd have to turn around and go back home. But when we would go down, my mom and dad were drinkers. Well, they were alcoholics, but Skeet would want to go. My mom and dad would say, or I guess I should say Jim and Betty, would say to you, hey, you want to go, into Sedalia and whatever, and Skeet would want to go, of course, and she'd have to ask Michael, and he would say no, and then, there wasn't a lot of difference between me and Michael in age, but I was just, he would tell her no, and then she'd beg, and then she'd start, and I thought, somebody needs to take this kid out, and and then, finally she'd say, well, when we were there, you saw this hunting knife that you wanted, and he said, yeah, I'd like to have that. Well, can I, and he'd say, well, no, you can't go. But then she'd say, well, what about, such and such that you wanted, the hat, or I don't know what it was, something. And so she'd have to buy like 2 of these things or something and bring them back, or, go have her drinks and then bring them, And one time we went down, there was a farmer that was interested in her. He was single, and he had a big farm, and he had we went there for dinner. He had us, had her and Michael and my mom and dad and me. I think that was it. Over to his place, and he fixed dinner. I don't know if she helped. She probably helped. He was a really nice guy, and he had, like I said, he had a big farm. We saw his vehicle, of course, you have to have, but he had a couple cars, and I guess probably a car and a truck, and then, other stuff. But anyway, he had money, and he seemed like a really nice guy, and Michael didn't like him. And so that was, let's see. This is why I'm afraid of clowns. This is me and, of course, my oldest daughter, LaDonna. She made that costume herself. Snapshot. Skeet. Let's see. I guess that's it. It's still not soon enough to see but I'm going to stop anyway. Going to check my bank account here in a little while and see, but it's too early. See if maybe I've got my stimulus money. The only thing I'm planning on this chair is terrible. So I'm going to spend $200 of that stimulus money when it comes and get a new chair, because this is, it's just not, you know, not working out. So anyway, please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Please click the little bell thing so you get a notice when I post something. Also, if you can, use one of my links below to Amazon. You know, go to use my link. We can use jimhoward.me, and it's a secure link. And if you're going to go look for something on Amazon, because then once you go there using that link, if you purchase something, it doesn't cost you anything, but I get a small commission. So looking at these pictures, by the way, here, I'm looking forward to getting out with my Google Pixel 4a and taking some pictures. So, and you'll probably be seeing them. So anyway, thank you very much.